Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the No More Perfect podcast. You know, our time on this earth is temporary, and someday we'll leave this earth, and it's our legacy that we will leave behind. And talking about the topic of dying can be a tender and uncomfortable subject. But it's conversations like we're going to have today that can disarm the topic and help us to all become a little more comfortable with it. This has become a passion for my friend Yvette. As an end-of-life transition coach, Yvette supports individuals and families in the sacred yet challenging space of end-of-life transitions. This has become her calling and her purpose, and today we get to benefit from her passion and her wisdom. Welcome to the No More Perfect podcast, Yvette.
Thank you. I love No More Perfect. Thank you for that.
Yes, it goes right along with real life, doesn't it?
It does.
So, I was thinking before we got on this call, I was like, just thinking back to when you and I first met. We first met at Focus on the Family, I believe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You were working there.
Yes.
And we did, I can't even remember. I know we did several events together, like online events.
Yes. We did a few through Focus, then Hearts at Home.
Yep.
Then Your Family Live. We had several little connections. And then from the professional connections became the friend connections. Then it was dinner at Tammy's or Lorraine's or, different places. Yeah. So it's been a sweet journey.
It has been. It has been. And used to, when I would go to Colorado Springs, I could see you and I could see Lorraine, I could see Tammy, I could see Julie Slattery. Like all of us kind of formed a friendship. But you have moved away. Julie has moved away. Both Tammy and Lorraine are still there, but so you're now in Florida. And so you and I get to see each other when I'm down in Florida and I get to see my mom.
It's perfect.
I know. It's been really fun. So as far as this topic goes, because, back then when you and I first met, I was at Hearts at Home and it was all about mothering, and you were at Focus on the Family. It was all about family topics and parenting and marriage. And so now you have really taken a turn and you are doing something very different, but I know that it came out of your own personal journey, that you kind of found this. So can you just take us back a few years to when life kind of changed for you and the beautiful gift you were given that ultimately took you on this journey?
I call it the hard and holy journey, but it was an invitation. And I treasure the Lord's stepping stones. Even as you were talking, I'm thinking, as in everything, the stepping stones are leading us somewhere, right? But this particular topic has led me into this passion of how to come alongside people, individuals, families, to offer what we needed when my mother-in-law was passing. And that's where the journey officially began. And again, the invitation to, during 2020, when we were all in COVID, not knowing what was happening and what quarantine really meant, and thought, maybe a couple of weeks of this thing turned into the last 6 months of my mother-in-law's life. And I was privileged to get to be her caregiver. And in that journey, wow, she and I had conversations that were deep and wide and fun and legacy building and things that she would want to be done and said and gifted and given. And at the end of her life, that we would never have gotten had we not spent, again, that unique time again, I don't think any of us enter into these thinking, I think this will, of course, change my life. But in fact, here I am. And so that was the beginning. And it, like I said, hard and holy invitation. But wow, it's the one thing we all have in common. Talk about a leveler.
Right?
Death is not contagious either. And yet we treat it as such. We don't want to talk about it. Even my mother-in-law, Carmela was her name, she would say, "Oh, why do you want to talk about these things? This is the most morbid conversation. Are you just planning for me to die tomorrow?" And frankly, I would say to her, maybe, but guess what? Me too. And everyone else we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a beautiful gift that you actually had the ability to really move to be her full-time caregiver. I mean, you were kind of, one job had ended and you were in between in that season, weren't you?
Well, it actually, I chose to leave that job
Okay.
to become her caregiver. Someone had to, again, because of the quarantine. And again, this thing that we didn't know what it was called COVID. And so she had broken her hip. She was in her 90s, couldn't live alone anymore. And it was, who can go? And it was so sweet of the Lord. She and I always had this relationship of Ruth and Naomi, and where you go, I'm going. And it just felt so right because it was so right.
Right. So you moved into her home.
Yes.
And was she officially on hospice at the time?
She was. When we began hospice, and anyone walking through the hospice life and situation, you don't know how long it's going to be. We didn't know how long it's going to be. Like I said, we had 6 months.
Right. Some people only get days or weeks.
Now, when the word hospice or that season or that turn toward actively dying, all of a sudden you're hit with, what do we do with this? And that's why in my end of life caregiver role and transitioning, I would say to you, I would say to your children, to my children, to anyone, don't wait until you're in that mode of actively dying or a crisis mindset or emotional mindset where you cannot walk through this fog, get through this fog, and understand important decisions that you need to be making. So she and I, we learned a lot together. Some days easy and some days the hard way.
Right. And initially, she wasn't comfortable talking about this.
No.
And do you feel that changed?
Oh, it most definitely changed. It softened both of us into a space. I'm a fixer. I like to get in. I like to do. I'm an activator. And to sit in such a hard and holy sacred space and just be.
Yes.
And listen.
Yes.
And support in where she needed support, not where I felt she needed support.
Yes.
That's been a learning for me. But she and I, like I said, we had days and it was just sandpaper, and we learned together.
So when you think about what you wish you would have had, and then ultimately what you wish you would have known, maybe earlier rather than later, let's start with that. What are some of the things that come to mind?
Now I have a vocabulary for some of these things. For example, advanced directives. If you don't have your advanced directives, well, I didn't know the words advanced directives. Most of us know what a will is, and we know that we need to get our medical affairs in order. We need our legal affairs in order. But who does that? Who really knows how to navigate this until you have to? But here's something I had no idea, and I've learned since 2020, something called an ethical will.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
yes, not just your medical, not just your legal, but the ethical will is actually a Jewish tradition, and it comes out of oral history, and it's the passing on stories, the passing on of legacies and stories. And this ethical will is from the heart. And so it's being able to sit with someone and say, okay, I like to say it like this, the why behind the why. So for example, I'll use my cup here. If this were my mother-in-law's and I would say to Carmela, okay, I have no idea where you got this, what this means. Is it special? Do you want this to go to someone, a grandchild, anyone? And I would say, it looks like goodwill to me. So, and I'm the one that's going to be taking it. So I would say to her, I would go and I will take it. And she would say, don't you dare. That cup was given to me by, my father-in-law from a Navy boat. Like she would start telling me these stories, right?
Mm.
And after we sort of fell into this new rhythm, this is what we learned. And I would pick up something and I would go through the house or like her jewelry or different things and say, what's the why behind the why? Tell me the story of this. Well, we just did it because we fell into it and we had all the time to be able to do these things. But now I've since learned that an ethical will is adding to that what you want to share from your heart. What do you want to leave behind as part of your legacy, as part of your giving to the rest of your kids and grands and family and friends? And how can we best capture that?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of why I've started, and I'll hold it up. You've seen this.
Yes. And for those of you that are just listening audio wise, she's got a packet that she now makes available called Last Rites, WRITES, capturing the stories you're dying to tell. Yes.
And that's really where it came out of, because Jill, I'll tell you, I've lost people that I didn't have the luxury of 6 months.
Right.
And when you lose someone quickly and you are sitting in your grief and you're walking through that season of just lament and grief, and all you have is, I wish I'd known. I wish I would have asked. I wish we could have talked about this. I wish I had have asked the questions when I had the time and the opportunity. And so building this packet and bringing this ethical will into what I think is just such a critical place is to hear the heart, not just check all the boxes, which are critical and important, and part of the packet is just helping people understand what is it that I know that no one else knows? Passwords, how to navigate, insurance, financial, legal, all the things.
Yes.
And again, just the things that mean something to us. But the stories that we hope gets just transmitted, through the generations of what did my great grandmother or my great grandfather do or think? Or, how did they respond? What were their life regrets? What were their successes? What were the things that just made them know that they were living out the purpose of their life? Like, these are the stories and conversations that we oftentimes wish we would have had with someone, but that I got the honor of asking Carmela. Yeah. Every day.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful. And I love just the idea of going through the house and saying, tell me about this. Where did it come from? Who gave it to you? Was there anything special about it? That's really powerful.
And, I snuck a few of these in, but I videotaped. Some she gave me permission.
Yeah.
And then others, it would just be a story that she was telling, and I would capture it on my phone and turn it on. And then I would show it to her after, and she'd say, "Oh, look at my hair." And I would say, "I promise, this is such a gift to all of us to have you in your own words, in your own voice, tell your stories." It's critical.
It is.
Yeah.
I totally agree. My before my dad passed away, um, it, probably 2, 3 times in my life, he took us on a cemetery tour of our family, of our extended family. We can go back. Some of them were born in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and we went from cemetery to cemetery. Some of those, where you're digging around looking for the grave, and told so many stories that had been passed down, from, that he remembered hearing from his parents and his grandparents. And our daughter, I remember telling my dad that I really wanted him to take my kids on that tour. And so we did. And then my daughter turned it into like a scrapbook,
Right.
the stories. It was so beautiful. And
I
I
love
love that
that.
she captured that and that we have those. So I think that, understanding who the people were that came generations before you is powerful. And of course, anything that you can know about them personally. I think those are the things that start to get lost over time, right?
And, being able to, for example, when we're preparing to have a child, right? When we're getting ready you and I can relate to a new grandchild or, having a baby. We nest, we get everything ready, we understand, we get everything prepared. We learn as much as we possibly can. And it hit me during that season with Carmela. Why are we not doing this at death? Why are we not focusing on what is inevitable for all of us to better prepare, to learn, to research, to to nest, if you will, to get everything ready? And it's a beautiful cycle of life that when we're not afraid of death, when we really can accept that we're all going to die, I think we live differently.
How do you believe that we live differently?
I think because we plan for things, uh, but we don't necessarily plan our death. So, for example, what's the best gift that I can give to my loved ones right now? That is to live every day to the full, to be present, right? To be
Yes.
engaged, to be intentional, all of the things that we do, right? To be
Hmm.
present, to talk, to build, understand. Okay, if we can do this as a preparation in the same conversation to prepare as best we can for our death, it helps us to put that away and focus on living. The better prepared we are for dying, the better present we are while we're living, the more present. And so being able to give this gift to my children to say, when something happens to me, I want you to have the opportunity to be sad and grieve with all your emotions, not have to sit across from anyone at a table and think through the hard things of finances or what did mom want? Did she want to be buried? Did she want to be cremated? Uh, did she want to be in Florida, in Colorado? Wait, all her family's in Kentucky. So all of these things that you go through that you're going to naturally be asking, um, that if you're sitting, especially in a church setting, if you're sitting with a pastor, they're saying, do you have any favorite songs or favorite verses for Yvette? Are there pictures? And now we all go dig in all of our pictures, right? And we're doing this. And part of that's cathartic, but part of that is then figuring out how to load on 60 pictures to 3-minute songs, and how does it fit the format, and who could speak, and where did mom want to have this service? Was it a funeral? Is it a celebration of life? All of these questions that come up when someone passes.
Most of us have opinions about that.
I think everyone has an opinion. Everybody I ask has an opinion, and they say, I don't think I've told anybody this.
Right.
It's like, okay, that's what I'm here for. We're going to capture this. We're going to write these things down. And I even go so far as to help sort of fill in the blank later, but your obituary, your full name, your parents, your grandparents, your titles, your work life. I even go so far as to say, let's write your epitaph. What do you want people to know and hear about your life from your voice?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that was so powerful for me. When my father, in fact, the doctor had said, it was time for him to go on hospice. And, in my father's, we always would tease him that, he'd figure out, he used to tease me, I'd figure out a way to get my way, and he could too as well. He died the day he was supposed to go on hospice. He did not want to go on hospice, so he died instead.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. He really did. He really struggled going on hospice. But when when the doctor said that, I had been at a conference and I'd gotten the call and that he'd gone back to the hospital, and, this is what the doctors were saying. I left, I did my keynote message, and then I left and I drove right back, and I ended up staying with him in the hospital for 3 days. And when I walked in and sat down, and he said, Jill, we're going to put that writing to good use. I'd like for you and I together to write my obituary. It's going to make me cry to think about it, right? But doing that together caused me to know the things that were important to him.
Yes.
That was so powerful. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I really value what you're saying, that, had he not literally asked me to do that, we would have been recalling things that I wouldn't have included some of the things that were important to him.
And when you think about this, death ends a life. It doesn't end a relationship.
Right? Yeah.
And you will now sit in that holy, sacred, beautiful space of that relationship, of what it meant to you, of what he said, what you said, how you captured. And now you are taking that as part of your legacy for his story to be passed and continued forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about it.
Really do.
Yeah. And again, we all have situations where maybe someone has gotten a diagnosis.
Right.
You could speak to this. What went through your mind with your diagnosis? All of a sudden you're faced with, I don't know what's going to happen in the next day, week, months, years, right? And you probably kicked into gear of, I have to figure some things out and communicate them and write them down and maybe get them, again, legally, medically taken care of.
Right.
Sometimes we're given that opportunity. And sadly, we lost someone very dear in 2024. My sister-in-law, healthy sister-in-law, 62 years old, just had a heart failure and just died.
Wow.
And so no one saw this coming. No one.
Right.
No one saw this coming. And so what happens is shock.
Yeah.
And you're lingering in that space of shock and anger and the cycles of grief, and you're going through these phases and cycles of trying to figure out, you don't want to have to go through somebody's got to do this and somebody's going to do that and somebody's going to figure that. Her sons were just numb. Her husband was almost just couldn't speak. Everyone's in such shock. And so we're all going to go through this. It's either going to be us with our loved ones or someone that we know and love, or if we're given the gift of time. But again, we're back to the same point. All of us are going to die.
Really, we all have a diagnosis. We have a diagnosis. We all do. Right? It's just that, and that diagnosis is we're human and we will die.
Yeah.
And so, but boy, so many of us do try to avoid the subject because we're uncomfortable with it.
Right.
But I try to think of it as, and Mark and I have, I remember the very first thing I did, probably 10, maybe even longer, 12 years ago, a friend of mine for Christmas gave all of her kids she called it the everything book. And all of her kids, it was her passwords. It was her insurance information. It was all in a 3-ring binder. And it was called her everything book. In fact, I think I did a blog post on it and kind of listed everything that was in there, which is the same idea of what you have in your packets as well. And so we pulled that together, just thinking, of everything that people need to know, because it's a gift if they don't have to go digging for it.
That's the thing. Let them sit in their space of shock, grief, and frankly, reflection. It's different when we are in reflection mode than when we have to be in forward mode.
Yeah.
When someone passes, it should be a sweet time of reflecting and sitting in those places together in stories, cooking favorite things, eating favorite things, letting our senses connect and hold that space. But when we have to be in forward thinking mode, what are we going to do with this? What about that? What are we going to do with this? I have no idea what she want me to do with her house, her car, her things, her this, pets. That's a whole thing. When someone passes and their, pet is there, but they didn't tell anybody there's just so many unending questions that we don't have to have happen in that time of grief and despair. And we can better plan for these things again.
Right. Yeah.
And then tuck them away and say, okay, Lord, this is in your timing. I have a friend who she and I met, and she's actually recorded a message that she wants to be played at her memorial service.
I love it.
She let me interview her and ask her several questions, and we edited that. And it's, things like, what do you want to say to anyone sitting in the room right now? What is the message of your heart that you want people to know about?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a kind of a funny side. I actually, with my mom, my sweet little mom, we were having a birthday party for her, and her birthday's in February. But I said, okay, Mom, because she was late 80s. And I said, okay, we're going to have your celebration of life in October.
Okay.
And because she had made the comment to me that she said, I don't want people showing up saying nice things about me when I can't hear them. And I said, well, let's just go ahead and have your little celebration of life, and we'll invite everybody, and we will have your favorite foods and what we would have at your celebration. Jill, it was the best party ever. We had everyone come. We had the big pictures, like at a celebration of life or a memorial service, her pretty things on the table that she picked out.
Oh my
I
goodness.
read her obituary with a date to be filled in. And there she sat, and everybody brought cards and spoke. We had music, and we spent the whole afternoon. And at the end, she said, okay, this was such a gift. Now,
Oh my gosh.
that's a little out there. But I will tell you, when it came for her real one,
Uh-huh.
it was sweet. We shared those stories and some of the, laughter and some of the stories, but we all were able to come together in such a different way.
Right?
It literally did. Oh, death, where is your sting? I think the sting is there when we don't talk about it.
Right.
And the sting is there when it catches everybody off guard and we don't know how to put these pieces together. And the very person who holds the lid to the puzzle is gone.
Especially somebody who is even a cornerstone of the family too. Like, especially when they're the one you look towards. And I mean, that can be a part of that as well, is you just feel a little lost without that person.
Mm-hmm. So just being intentional with this conversation and this topic, I think just opens up. I love that you're talking about this on your podcast because it begs the question of, again, who knows other than me, all the things, that I need to do. And you can look online, you can get checklists everywhere, again, just check, 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 check. But the pieces of the heart, that ethical will, the stories that you want told, those are sweet. And those you're going to reread and pass on in a different way. And, most of us don't know our great grandparents or, much, like you said, just maybe a little something, but we don't know the story and the why behind their story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if somebody had they've done nothing to prepare for their own transition out of this world, if they have really, maybe they're even young. They're in their 20s, they're in their 30s, right? That's when most of us are like, until you have kids. And then sometimes people will think, oh, we have kids, we probably should have a will, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when they begin that. But what would you say, no matter if somebody's listening that's 20, 30, or 60 or 70, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say if they've done nothing? What would be a first step for them?
A first step is tell somebody. So, for example, I have a group of friends. You and I have talked about different friend groups, but in Colorado Springs. And we get together maybe once or twice a year. And we were very intentionally at one of our gatherings to say, okay, what is it? Do you want to be buried, cremated? Like, we had a little checklist. And we actually filled it out and we witnessed it for each other and made copies for each other. So that's at a basic. That's an easy, do it where you're comfortable with friends. If you're married, make sure that your spouse knows, just at a very basic level. Again, if something happens upon my immediate death, I really hope that you will fill in the blank with where I am laid to rest or what the next steps are. So, I mean, that's at a basic. Again, then you're going to keep going. You're going to keep building on that, because if you have assets or don't have assets, and by the way, if you think you don't have assets, you do.
Right.
For example, Exhibit A.
Right. Your little coffee cup, because that was
may
precious.
mean something, to one of my children, because I love my Rise and Shine coffee mug. They know I drink out of this every day. This has special value, not monetary, but this has meaning. So tell people, tell your loved ones, write it down at the very least. So I think that's a first step. I have to tell you, this packet, of course, since I talk about this all the time, my daughter, Lauren, she goes, Mama, guess what? I have my last rites packet. I keep it in the van. And every day in carpool, I've just been trying to fill out one more thing, one more little thing, one more little thing, one more little. And I'm like, oh, I'm so proud. I'm so proud. But she goes, yeah, it's made me ask questions to her spouse, Joe. She said, Joe and I have had conversations. I didn't know the answers. How would he answer this? So then after carpool, she said it made for conversations for he and I to start having.
Wow.
So again, just little baby steps. What is the C.S. Lewis? We don't know how it's going to end, but we can start today.
Yes.
We can just start today. So the homework is, if something happens to me, I want to be fill in the blank, buried, cremated. Where? Do we have plots? Do we have a special place? And have we brought the kids into this conversation? It's important. And they will probably roll their eyes and say, I don't want to talk about this. Well, we need to talk about this.
So let's talk for just a moment about this concept of an end of life transition coach, or some people are called like a death doula.
Right.
So, and you even use that name in your package.
Because everybody goes, what? A death doula? Are you like Dr. Kevorkian? Are you helping people die? And it's a topic that's, not
misunderstood.
It's kind of new still. Yes. So it's very misunderstood. But when you can look at it as, I want to come alongside individuals and their loved ones to provide a safe, a nurturing presence, a stillness, support, to just be there. It's not hospice. So an end-of-life caregiver is not offering medical services at all. It's maybe talking through, for example, facilitating meaningful conversations or rituals. Are there things that you really love? For example, we just had an individual who has just passed Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And in that space, he wanted soft lighting. And it meant a lot to have worship music. He knew he was dying someday, but he loved having soft worship music in the background. I asked him, do you like a specific scent? Yeah, there was a candle that he really just loved. Well, let me get that. Let's just have this room. And to be able to have a conversation and say, I'll pick a name. I'll say, John. John, when it gets closer, is there anybody you really want to have in the room with you? Is it important for you to die alone? Or is it important for you to have people around you? If so, who is that?
Yeah.
If you should lose your voice and the ability to be able to communicate and speak, are there things that you and I can talk about right now before we get to that point?
Gotcha.
Are there things that we can do? Do you like soft blankets? Do you feel like the room is cold or hot? Or what's your preference here? Soft environments, surroundings, but what you want. That's what an end-of-life doula, death doula, the role is to come alongside the person who is dying and to be a support for him or her and their support, their community, their loved ones, or whoever it is that's walking, with them.
Yeah. So you might be taking care of, you also might be relieving the family of just tasks at that
Most
time.
definitely. Yes.
So they're
Again,
freed up.
non-medical tasks. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
running, going and getting the candle and making sure those kind of things are taken care of so they can just enjoy their time with their loved one.
And everybody says, well, when's the right time to contact a death doula? Now. I'll say now, because here's the thing. If I know your desires, your needs, Jill, if I am taking notes and you and I are talking about this and we're doing this, we're tucking it away, we're just putting it away for someday, then as you turn that corner, if you have time to turn that corner, someone's going to get the packet. Someone's going to take this and open it and read and go, oh, okay, she's spoken with Yvette back whenever. And these are the notes and these are the things. It's really important for Jill to have someone around her and to be in the room with her. So the conversation to have with the doula is to help get as many things as in order as possible, to help prepare as much as. And then the actual, when someone turns that corner towards actively dying, then we've already had the conversation perhaps. Mm-hmm. And it's a time then to say, gosh, this is familiar. You don't invite a doula in when you're pushing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
No, a birth doula has established some relationship. She's talked to you. You've researched together. You've understanding what's about to happen. If we could take the fear and the sting as much as we possibly can into this very unknown place of dying, much like trying to tell a woman who's never had a child, when she's getting ready to enter that birthing, that last, transitional phase, right?
Right.
She does not want to be talking research at that point.
No.
She wants somebody sitting there that's going to say, you've got this. It's okay. You're doing it right. We're doing, well. We're doing all the things appropriately. So if you can kind of hold those two, I think, symbiotic birth and death, to just have someone there with you who is talking through it and who's just holding that space.
Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. I remember the first time you and I talked about this topic, it was when I was down in Florida. I believe probably it would have been 2023 or 2024. When did you guys move down there?
23. So it would have been then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was, or maybe it would have been like January of 24. And I remember that you and I talked about this topic. We sat at a donut shop in Destin, Florida, and talked about this topic. And it was just starting to bubble up inside of you. Yes. And we even talked about, I said, someday let's talk about this on the podcast. And so I'm so glad that someday came.
And again, my husband will say, wow, this is something the Lord's put on your heart, because who signs up to talk about death? Yeah. Well, here I am. But it is, again, it's been a sweet journey of just holding that space for people, loved ones, friends, family, and people. My church now is calling saying, hey, so-and-so or her husband, would you like to just go over and meet with them and be able to sit and just kind of.
So they're recognizing it. Yeah, they're recognizing it as a ministry.
Which I think is new.
I do too. I mean, we're great at, casseroles after somebody dies, right?
But we're never on the front end of it. So, yeah.
I think that you're really onto something. So I know you don't yet have a website. You're just getting started on social media, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is all, relatively new, and it's really just been word of mouth that you've operated by. But how could people get a hold of the packet, the last rites packet, the one that your daughter just keeps in her car and does during carpool? How can they get a hold of that?
I just love it. Email is the best way to be in touch with me, and that way we can communicate back and forth. But Yvette at yournextchaptertoday.com.
Okay, Yvette at yournextchaptertoday.com. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes so that you can reach out to you, Yvette, if there is if you're interested in getting one of her packets. So thank you so much, Yvette. This has been a really important conversation. And I'd love for you to pray for our listeners or those that are watching on YouTube. Would you be willing to do that?
I would love that. I would consider it an honor. Thank you. Oh, Father, we give you this time, our conversation, but more importantly, Lord, may you be glorified. Father, we just love you and we praise you that you who created us have never left us, never forsaken us. And anyone listening to this right now, Holy Spirit, I just ask that you will stir in them a knowing that someday they will be faced with, Lord, the most important decision, and that is, where will I spend life for eternity? Let that be the most important conversation out of today, is what happens when I die to my heart and my eternity. And Lord, I just pray that you are prompting anyone listening to this, to that question, is to answer with Jesus in heaven for all of eternity. And stir in us, Lord, how to best prepare and love people. Love covers. It's your love, Father, that we want to just abound in our conversation and cover every detail. We praise you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, my friend.